The galaxy learned a dangerous lesson that day. When humans stop arguing and start smiling, someone has already made a terrible mistake. The war room of the Vraxian coalition glowed beneath layers of blue tactical holograms. Thousands of star systems floated in the darkness like scattered diamonds, each marked with military symbols, supply routes, and fleet positions. The air smelled faintly of recycled oxygen and heated circuitry. A low mechanical hum vibrated through the deck, plates beneath every officer's boots. General Varkle stood at the center platform, nearly 8 feet tall, his silver-gray uniform pressed with ceremonial precision. Behind him, a massive viewport revealed the stars above Karen Prime, where 3 coalition armadas currently held complete control of the sector. At least that was what every military analyst believed. Around him sat admirals, governors, diplomats, and military observers from 27 species. The largest gathering of military leadership the coalition had assembled in over a century. They had not gathered to discuss strategy. They had gathered to celebrate victory. A red indicator blinked across the holographic map. Another human fleet had abandoned its position. Another system surrendered without resistance. Another withdrawal. Another retreat. Another disappointment from a newest military power in the galaxy. Varkle folded his hands behind his back and slowly smiled. "Record this transmission," he ordered. Technicians immediately activated dozens of broadcast drones. Tiny cameras floated into position around the chamber. Across hundreds of worlds, billions of citizens tuned into the live military briefing. The Vraxian general waited for silence. Then he spoke. For decades, humanity claimed to be a warrior species. His deep voice echoed through the chamber. They called Earth a death world. They boasted of resilience. They celebrated courage. Several officers chuckled. Varkle allowed the laughter to spread. Yet every time they face true opposition, they retreat. More laughter followed. Every battle, every system, every fleet. He turned toward the giant star map. Human-controlled sectors flashed yellow across the projection. The evidence is undeniable. He paused. Humans are cowards. The room erupted. Admirals laughed openly. Diplomats exchanged amused looks. One governor nearly spilled his drink while applauding. Varkle watched the reaction with satisfaction. The statement would dominate every news network before the hour ended. Humanity's reputation would not recover from this humiliation. On a distant observation deck above the chamber, a junior intelligence officer named Kalen shifted uncomfortably. Unlike the others, he wasn't laughing. He stared at the tactical display and felt a strange sensation twisting in his stomach. Something wasn't right. Human losses were lower than projected. Their supply lines remained strangely organized. Their communications traffic had actually increased during their retreats. None of it matched the behavior of a collapsing military. Kalen checked the data again. Then again, the numbers remained the same. A human fleet had abandoned the Carina corridor 12 hours ago. Yet before leaving, they had quietly evacuated every civilian transport, every cargo vessel, every mining station employee. It wasn't panic. It looked planned, deliberate, methodical. He glanced toward the celebrating officers below. "Why would they do that?" he whispered. No one heard him. Down in the chamber, Varkle continued addressing the galaxy. The coalition offers humanity one final opportunity. Surrender now and preserve what remains of your territories. Cheers followed. Cameras captured every angle, every smile, every moment of triumph. Millions of viewers celebrated alongside them. Hundreds of military commentators repeated the same conclusion. Humanity was finished. Humanity had lost its nerve. Humanity was running away. But nearly 70,000 light-years away, beneath the surface of Earth's moon, another room sat in complete silence. There were no cameras there. No applause. No celebrations. Only rows of dark monitors casting pale light across steel walls. Admiral Marcus Hayes stood alone before a secure communication console. The old officer watched Varkle's speech without expression. He listened to every insult, every laugh, every word. When the broadcast ended, the screen went black. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then a young communications officer finally cleared her throat. "Sir." Hayes looked up. "Yes." "Should we respond?" The Admiral stared at the dark screen. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not with anger, not with frustration, with amusement, the kind that appears when someone unknowingly steps on a thin ice. Hayes reached toward the console and disabled the transmission. "No," he said quietly. "Not yet." He turned toward the secure door at the far end of the chamber. Two armed guards immediately straightened. A retinal scanner activated. Layers of security systems hummed to life. The communications officer watched him with confusion. "Sir." Hayes stopped before the sealed vault entrance. The metal door reflected cold white light across his weathered face. For the first time all evening, his expression became serious. "They think we're retreating," he said. "Good." The vault locks began disengaging one by one. Deep inside the facility, machinery awakened after years of silence. Somewhere beyond the steel door, hidden within classified archives that only a handful of people in the galaxy knew existed, two files waited in darkness. And for the first time in almost 15 years, someone had finally come to open them. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy was not a weapon. It was a question nobody could answer. Lieutenant Kalen sat alone in Intelligence Analysis Chamber 7, while the celebration above continued long into the station's artificial night. Through the reinforced glass wall, he could see streams of transport traffic moving between docking spires, carrying diplomats, officers, and reporters eager to congratulate themselves on a war they believed was already won. His workstation projected thousands of data points across the dim room. Fleet movements, supply transfers, communication records, economic forecasts. Every model predicted the same outcome. Humanity should have been collapsing. Yet somehow the numbers refused to behave. Kalen rubbed his eyes and enlarged the latest battlefield report. Human forces had abandoned another sector during the past 6 hours. The withdrawal looked clean. Too clean. Fuel depots were empty before coalition fleets arrived. Civilian evacuation routes had already been cleared. Even damaged equipment had vanished. It was as though the humans had anticipated every move weeks in advance. He leaned back in his chair. "If this is panic," he muttered, "then why does it look organized?" The station lights dimmed slightly as midnight energy protocols activated. Most analysts had already gone home. Kalen remained. Something buried inside the reports continued to bother him. He opened a communication archive containing intercepted human transmissions. Thousands of messages scrolled past. Logistics updates, Navigation instructions, fleet coordination, routine military traffic. Then one file caught his attention. The transmission was heavily encrypted and only partially recovered. Timestamped less than 3 hours after General Varkel's public speech. Kalen opened it. Static filled the audio channel. Fragments of voices emerged. Most of the message remained corrupted. Then 4 clear words appeared in the transcript. "Release the Boogeyman." Kalen frowned. He replayed the recording. The same words appeared again. "Release the Boogeyman." The phrase meant nothing to coalition databases. He searched military records. No ship, no commander, no operation, nothing. The term did not exist. Yet the transmission carried the highest human security classification his system had ever encountered. His pulse quickened. He launched a broader search. Historical archives, intelligence databases, diplomatic reports, smuggling networks, civilian media. For several seconds, the system returned 0 results. Then a single classified document surfaced. Access restricted. Clearance denied. Kalen stared at the screen. Why would a non-existent word be classified? Across the station, celebrations continued. Music echoed through distant corridors. Officers toasted their victories. Journalists prepared headlines. Nobody else seemed interested in strange human transmissions. Kalen copied the file reference and continued digging. An hour later, another alert appeared. This one originated from a remote coalition outpost near the edge of occupied territory. He opened a report expecting routine logistics updates. Instead, he found confusion. long-range sensors had briefly detected an unidentified vessel entering the system. The contact appeared for only 17 seconds before disappearing. No engine signature, no registration code, no transponder signal, nothing. Local commanders initially dismissed it as sensor interference. Then a second report arrived from another outpost almost 200 light-years away. The same anomaly. 17 seconds. Then nothing. Kalen compared the timestamps. The events occurred only minutes apart. No conventional ship could travel that distance so quickly. He felt the uneasy sensation in his stomach return. Somewhere in Coalition space, something was moving. Quietly, deliberately, beyond detection. He turned toward the viewport, overlooking the stars. Countless points of light stretched into infinity. Beautiful, silent, unchanging. Yet for the first time since the war began, the silence felt different, as though the darkness itself was waiting. Several thousand light-years away, deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Marcus Hayes stood before a sealed archive chamber illuminated by cold white lights. Rows of dormant servers extended into the distance like monuments from another age. The massive vault door behind him remained open. 2 personnel files rested on a secure display table. No photographs appeared on the covers. No rank insignias. No service branches. Only names. Hayes looked at the first file, then the second. The old admiral exhaled slowly. "I was hoping the galaxy would never need you again," he said quietly. The room offered no reply. But somewhere beyond Coalition territory, hidden among the stars, events already set in motion continued moving forward. And for the first time in 15 years, 2 legends were no longer sleeping. Secrets rarely stayed buried because someone wanted the truth. They surfaced because too many people believed there was nothing left to discover. Lieutenant Kalen stared at the glowing display as another encrypted report arrived from the frontier. The timestamp was only 8 minutes old. His fingers moved across the console. The report opened. Sensor anomaly detected. Unidentified vessel. No engine signature. No registered flight path. Contact duration, 17 seconds. Then gone. Kalen leaned forward. That made 3 incidents in less than 12 hours. 3 different systems. 3 different sectors. All reporting the same impossible pattern. He overlaid the locations onto a star map. For several moments, he simply stared. The points formed a rough line, cutting directly through coalition-controlled territory. Not toward a military objective, not toward a fleet concentration, toward the center, toward command infrastructure. His pulse accelerated. Somewhere in the darkness, something was moving with purpose. Across the station, celebrations had finally begun winding down. Maintenance drones floated through empty corridors, collecting discarded decorations. News networks replayed General Varkel's speech on endless loops. Commentators praised the coalition's success. Analysts predicted the complete collapse of organized human resistance within months. Kalen muted every broadcast. The confidence felt wrong now. Too loud. Too comfortable. He opened another search window and entered the phrase again. Release the Boogeyman. This time, he widened the search parameters beyond military records. Ancient archives. Historical conflicts. Declassified diplomatic correspondence. Obscure cultural references. The system processed for several seconds. Then one result appeared. Just one. Fragmented. Incomplete. Origin unknown. The document contained only a single sentence recovered from a centuries-old intelligence exchange between 2 extinct civilizations. Kalen read it twice, then a third time. If humans ever release the Boogeyman, leave the system immediately. He felt a chill travel down his spine. The source had no verification, no context, no explanation. Yet somehow that made it worse. Outside the viewport, distant stars burned against the blackness. Silent, unmoving, watching. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Marcus Hayes sat alone inside Archive Chamber 12. The room smelled faintly of dust, machine oil, and old electronics. Around him stood rows of storage cores containing forgotten operations, classified histories, and secrets that entire governments no longer remembered existed. The two files remained open on the table before him. Most personnel records contained pages of achievements, commendations, service histories, and photographs. These files contained almost nothing. Names, clearance codes, mission dates. Entire sections had been intentionally erased. Hayes understood why. Some stories were dangerous even when true. A soft tone echoed through the chamber. Incoming transmission. Secure channel. Hayes accepted it. The image of Captain Ethan Walker appeared above the console. The fleet officer looked exhausted. Red command lights reflected across his face from the bridge of his ship. "Sir," Walker said, "the Coalition believes the retreat is working." Hayes nodded. "Good. Some of my officers are beginning to ask questions." "And what did you tell them?" Walker hesitated. "That we are following orders." For the first time, the old admiral smiled. "That is exactly what you should tell them." Walker glanced towards something beyond the camera. "There's another issue." Hayes waited. "We picked up movement in the outer systems." "Coalition scout." "No, sir." Walker's expression shifted. "Something else." Silence filled the chamber. Then Hayes slowly closed one of the files. "They are early. You know what it is?" Walker asked. Hayes looked toward the sealed archive shelves disappearing into the shadows. "I know who it is. Several thousand light years away, on a remote Coalition listening post orbiting an unremarkable star, technicians monitored routine traffic moving through local communications networks. Most of the signals were ordinary. Código manifestos, navigation updates, administrative reports. Then a brief transmission appeared without warning. No source identifier. No relay origin. No recognizable encryption architecture. The message contained only 6 words. The signal vanished before anyone could trace it. The technician stared at the screen. "What is that supposed to mean?" he whispered. Nearby, supervisors gathered around the console. Nobody answered. The message remained displayed across the monitor in plain white text. "We are what Varkle said." And for the first time since the war began, a room full of Coalition personnel found themselves staring into silence. Uncertain why such a simple sentence felt less like a message and more like a warning. Nothing spreads faster through a military than fear, except uncertainty. 36 hours after the mysterious transmission appeared across the Coalition listening post, confusion began replacing confidence. Reports arrived from every corner of occupied space. Not emergencies, not attacks, something stranger. Entire supply schedules were failing without explanation. Long-range communications experienced brief interruptions. Navigation buoys reported unauthorized recalibrations before returning to normal. Individually, none of the incidents mattered. Together, they formed a pattern nobody could explain. General Varkle stood inside Strategic Command Tower, overlooking the capital city below. Streams of air traffic crossed the evening sky between illuminated towers. The war still appeared firmly under Coalition control. Human fleets continued retreating. Territorial gains continued expanding. Every official report confirmed success. Yet Varkle hated one thing: unanswered questions. A military aide entered carrying a data tablet. "General, the logistics board requests immediate review." Varkle accepted the device. His expression darkened. Another supply network disruption. Another unexplained communication outage. Another sensor anomaly. "What is causing this?" he asked. "We do not know, sir." "Then find someone who does." The aide swallowed nervously. "Yes, sir." After the door closed, Varkle walked toward the massive star map covering the far wall. Hundreds of blue Coalition markers glowed across occupied territory. Everything looked stable, secure, predictable. Yet he could not shake the growing feeling that something was moving beneath the surface. Something hidden. Somewhere else aboard the station, Lieutenant Kalin stared at a newly decrypted intelligence package. His request for restricted access had finally been approved. Barely. Entire sections remained blacked out. Names removed. Dates erased. Operational details deleted. But one sentence survived. He read it slowly. "Human military doctrine reserves certain assets for existential circumstances." Kalin frowned. certain assets. The wording sounded less like equipment and more like people. He continued reading. Another paragraph appeared. Coalition analysts are advised to monitor unusual logistical activity if deployment authorization is suspected. Deployment authorization. The phrase echoed inside his head. Not activation. Not launch. Deployment. As if whatever the humans had released was already alive. Already moving. A warning tone interrupted his thoughts. New Frontier report received. Kalen opened the file immediately. A remote coalition relay station near the Helios corridor had suddenly gone offline for 11 minutes. No damage. No emergency signals. No distress calls. When communications resumed, every system functioned perfectly. Technicians found nothing wrong. Except for one detail. Someone had accessed the station archives during the outage. Kalen enlarged the report. Only one file had been viewed. General Varkel's public speech. His stomach tightened. Thousands of light years away, aboard the human cruiser Resolute Dawn, Captain Ethan Walker stood on the bridge watching stars flow past the forward observation screen. The ship moved quietly through deep space. Most of his crew believed they were repositioning for future defensive operations. Only Walker knew the truth. A communications officer approached. "Sir, priority message from Lunar Command." Walker accepted the encrypted packet. It contained only 7 words. Contact confirmed. Continue Phase 1 operations. Walker deleted the message immediately. Around him, bridge officers continued working without noticing anything unusual. That was intentional. Very few people knew the full plan. Even fewer knew who had finally returned. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Marcus Hayes remained inside Archive Chamber 12. The room was silent except for the faint hum of ancient servers. One of the personnel files rested open before him. A photograph finally appeared on the display. A man in a simple dark jacket stood beside an old spacecraft. No medals, no rank insignia, no indication that he belonged in military archives at all. Yet entire governments had classified his existence. Hayes studied the image for several seconds. Then another secure transmission arrived. The Admiral opened it. A single sentence appeared across the screen. Objective 1 completed. Hayes leaned back slowly. For the first time since opening the archive vault, genuine concern crossed his face. Not concern for humanity. Concern for everyone who still believed this was only a war. Because somewhere beyond the frontier, someone had already reached coalition territory. Someone had already begun moving pieces into place. And nobody had seen them arrive. The first sign that something had changed was not a missing fleet or a military defeat. It was silence. Lieutenant Kalen noticed it while reviewing communication traffic from the outer sectors. Coalition networks handled billions of transmissions every hour. Merchant routes, government reports, fleet logistics, civilian broadcasts, the endless noise of an interstellar civilization. Yet several regions had suddenly become quieter. Not disconnected, not damaged, simply quieter. Fewer messages, fewer requests, fewer routine complaints. The kind of subtle change most analysts would never notice. Kalen enlarged the affected sectors across his display. They formed a widening arc stretching through coalition territory. The same arc traced earlier by the unexplained sensor contacts. His heart began beating faster. He submitted a request for deeper access. Denied. He submitted another. Delayed. Somebody higher up clearly did not consider the anomalies important. Or perhaps they were afraid of what they might find. Across coalition space, commanders continued celebrating territorial gains. News programs praised General Varkel's leadership. Human withdrawals were still occurring exactly as predicted. Public confidence remained strong. Yet behind closed doors, administrators faced growing problems. Cargo shipments arrived at the wrong destinations despite perfect navigation records. Strategic planning meetings were postponed because critical personnel suddenly received conflicting orders. Secure databases showed evidence of access, but no files appeared stolen. Every incident seemed harmless, temporary, explainable, but they never stopped. Somewhere, Someone was touching the coalition's infrastructure with extraordinary precision. Not enough to break it, just enough to remind everyone it could be broken. General Varkle stood inside Strategic Command as another briefing concluded. The officers around the table looked increasingly frustrated. "Let me understand this," Varkle said. "You are telling me our systems are functioning?" "Yes, sir. Our fleets remain operational." "Yes, sir. Our communications are intact." "Yes, sir." Varkle narrowed his eyes. "Then why am I receiving 27 separate reports describing problems nobody can identify?" No one answered immediately. Finally, his systems director cleared his throat. "Because nothing appears connected." Varkle disliked that answer even more. Problems without causes. Effects without origins. Disturbances without visible perpetrators. They violated every principle of military analysis. The general turned toward the panoramic star map. The coalition still possessed overwhelming numerical superiority. Nothing on the display suggested danger. Yet he could not shake the feeling that somebody was standing just beyond the edge of the light, watching. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Marcus Hayes received another encrypted update. Objective 2 completed. No details. No explanations. Only confirmation. Hayes sat silently for several moments. Nearby officers exchanged uncertain looks. One finally spoke. "Sir, should we inform Fleet Command?" Hayes slowly shook his head. "Not yet. Most of them do not even know what is happening." "Exactly." The officer frowned. "With respect, sir, I do not know whether that is reassuring or terrifying." Hayes almost smiled. "Neither do I." Thousands of light years away, aboard an aging civilian transport hidden among ordinary commercial traffic, a solitary passenger sat beside a viewport. He appeared unremarkable. Mid-40s, plain dark jacket, short brown hair touched with gray. Nothing about him suggested historical significance. Nothing suggested governments had classified his existence for decades. The passenger quietly watched stars drift past. A small data screen rested on the seat beside him. One new message appeared. He read it once, then deleted it. Across the aisle, another traveler glanced toward him. "Business trip?" the traveler asked casually. The man considered the question. "Something like that." His voice carried no emotion, no arrogance, no threat, just certainty. The traveler nodded and returned to reading. Outside the ship, endless stars stretched across the darkness. Ahead lay coalition territory. Behind lay human space. And somewhere between them, invisible to nearly everyone involved in the war, pieces continued moving across a board most players did not even know existed. Back in the coalition capital, Lieutenant Kalen received a final report before ending his shift. A remote surveillance array had captured a brief image during one of the unexplained sensor events. The picture quality was poor, grainy, distorted. It showed something. A single human figure walking through a docking corridor. No weapons visible. No escort. No identifying markings. Just a man. Kalen stared at the image for a long time. Then he noticed the timestamp. The figure had appeared on a station more than 400 light years from the nearest recorded anomaly. Only 20 minutes earlier. For the first time, the young intelligence officer stopped wondering what the humans had released. He began wondering how many of them there were. The truth did not arrive with alarms. It arrived as a whisper buried beneath forgotten records. Lieutenant Kalen had not slept for nearly 20 hours when the breakthrough finally appeared. The Coalition Archive system processed billions of documents every day, and most requests disappeared into endless layers of bureaucracy. Yet one restricted file surfaced after repeated authorization attempts. The source was ancient, older than the current coalition itself, older than several member civilizations. Kalen opened it carefully. The document contained no images and almost no readable text. Most of it had been deliberately erased long ago. Only fragments remained. He scrolled through damaged paragraphs until a single sentence stopped him cold. Human strategic legends are not military units. They are individuals. Kalen sat motionless. Individuals, not fleets, not weapons platforms. not secret technologies. Individuals. He continued reading. Another fragment survived. Deployment of multiple legends simultaneously has only occurred during events classified as civilization-level emergencies. The young intelligence officer leaned back in disbelief. Across coalition territory, billions of citizens believed they were witnessing the final stages of a conventional war. Yet according to records older than most governments, humanity was treating the conflict as something far more serious. Somewhere above the capital world, morning sunlight reflected from towers of glass and metal. General Varkle stood before a private observation window overlooking the city. His advisors had spent days trying to explain the growing anomalies. None of their answers satisfied him. Supply disruptions continued. Communication irregularities continued. Strange sightings continued. No attacks. No direct confrontations. Just an invisible pressure that seemed to spread wider every day. An aide approached carrying a sealed intelligence package. "Priority report, sir." Varkle opened it immediately. His expression hardened. Several coalition member species had submitted formal inquiries regarding unusual rumors spreading through military channels. Personnel stationed near the frontier were exchanging stories. Stories about unidentified humans appearing where they should not be. Stories about systems receiving unexplained messages. Stories about entire command networks behaving as though someone was quietly studying them. Varkle closed the report. "Rumors are not intelligence." "No, sir." "Then stop treating them as such." The aide nodded and departed. Yet even after the room emptied, the general remained staring through the glass. Because rumors only survived when people wanted to believe them. And increasingly, people did. Thousands of light years away, aboard a civilian transport moving through coalition space, the solitary human passenger stepped into a quiet terminal crowded with travelers. Families crossed the concourse, carrying luggage. Merchants discussed contracts. Students hurried toward connecting departures. Nobody paid attention to the middle-aged man walking calmly through the center of it all. He carried no visible baggage, no security escort, no indication that entire governments might fear his name if they knew it. Above him, arrival screens flickered with local news broadcasts. One headline displayed General Varkle speaking before cheering crowds. The man watched for a moment. Then he continued walking. A message appeared on a small handheld device inside his jacket pocket. 3 words. Phase 1 complete. He deleted it without changing expression. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Marcus Hayes finally opened the second personnel file. Several officers standing nearby exchanged nervous glances. Even after days of preparation, nobody seemed comfortable being in the room. The file activated. A photograph appeared. Another ordinary face. Another human who looked completely unremarkable. One officer frowned. "That is impossible." Hayes understood the reaction. The photograph showed no giant armored warrior. No genetique liongenir super soldier. No legendary cancere. Just a woman standing beside an old spacecraft beneath a cloudy sky. "That is her?" the officer asked quietly. Hayes nodded. Silence filled the archive chamber. The officer studied the image again. "She does not look dangerous." The admiral looked toward the photograph, then toward the stars hidden far above the lunar rock. "That," he said softly, "is exactly why people underestimate them." Somewhere across coalition territory, 2 separate messages began moving through channels no one knew existed. They traveled through secure networks, abandoned relays, forgotten communication paths, and systems that officially no longer functioned. The messages were short, identical, and by the time they reached their destinations, the game had already changed. Because for the first time since the war began, both legends were awake. Every civilization believes it understands fear until it encounters something that refuses to follow the rules. 3 days after the second file was opened beneath the lunar surface, the atmosphere inside Coalition Command began to change. The celebrations had ended. The confidence remained, but now it carried cracks. Small ones at first, barely visible. A delayed report here. A missing authorization code there. A secure meeting mysteriously relocated because scheduling systems produced conflicting instructions. None of it threatened the war effort. Yet none of it stopped. Lieutenant Kalen watched the pattern grow across his displays. The anomalies now stretched through nearly a third of coalition territory. Every investigation reached the same conclusion. No hostile intrusion detected. No damage to infrastructure. No system failures. Everything worked exactly as designed. Somehow that answer disturbed him more than any warning ever could. He sat alone in analysis chamber 7, surrounded by floating windows of data. Thousands of reports filled the air around him. Most analysts searched for attacks. Kalen had stopped doing that. Whatever was happening did not behave like an attack. It behaved like observation, like someone quietly walking through a building and testing every locked door. He enlarged the image recovered from the surveillance array. The same human figure appeared crossing the station corridor. Ordinary clothes, ordinary posture, ordinary face. Yet the timestamp still made no sense. The distance alone should have been impossible. Another notification appeared. New report. Kalen opened it immediately. This time the source came from a coalition naval academy. A training database had been accessed for exactly 23 seconds. No files were copied. No records altered. Security logs showed nothing unusual except one search request. The phrase appeared on his screen. General Varkle. Kalen stared at the words. Whoever was moving through coalition systems seemed interested in only one person. Across the capital world, General Varkle reviewed the latest intelligence briefing with growing irritation. Advisors filled the conference chamber. Tactical displays covered every wall. "I'm tired of hearing what is not happening," Varkle said. "Tell me what is happening." The room fell silent. Finally, a senior analyst spoke. "Someone is studying us, sir." Varkle turned toward him. "Who?" The analyst hesitated. "We do not know." "How?" "We do not know." "Why?" The analyst lowered his eyes. "We do not know that either." Varkle walked to the viewport overlooking the city. Thousands of lights stretched toward the horizon. He had commanded fleets for decades. He understood enemies. He understood threats. But uncertainty was different. It had no shape, no location, no target. It simply sat in a room with you and waited. Deep beneath the moon, Admiral Marcus Hayes stood beside a secure communications terminal. A new message had arrived minutes earlier. Unlike the others, this one contained more than a simple status update. Hayes read the words carefully. Secondary asset in position. Observation phase complete. The Admiral closed his eyes briefly. Nearby officers exchanged nervous looks. One finally gathered the courage to speak. "Sir, are they close?" Hayes opened his eyes. Closer than anyone realizes. Thousands of light years away, on a bustling coalition transportation hub, a woman stepped off a civilian shuttle carrying a single travel case. Nobody noticed her. Travelers hurried past. Announcements echoed through the terminal ceiling. Vendors sold food. Children chased one another between waiting areas. The woman moved through the crowd without attracting a single glance. She wore a simple gray coat. Her blonde hair was tied back neatly. Her appearance was so ordinary that people forgot seeing her almost immediately. She stopped near a large information display broadcasting coalition news. General Varkle appeared on the screen, addressing military reporters. The woman watched for several seconds. Then a faint smile touched her face. Not amusement. Recognition. A small handheld device vibrated once. One message waited. The sender identification contained no name, only a symbol. She read 3 words. "He is ready." The message vanished automatically. Around her, life continued normally. Travelers boarded departures. Cargo moved through inspection lanes. The station remained peaceful, predictable, safe. Yet somewhere far away, Lieutenant Kalen continued assembling fragments of a puzzle. Somewhere else, General Varkle searched for answers. And somewhere between them, 2 ordinary-looking humans moved quietly through the largest military coalition in galactic history. Nobody stopped them. Nobody recognized them. Nobody understood that the most dangerous phase of the operation had never been about entering coalition territory. It had been about learning everything they needed before anyone realized they were already there. The moment General Varkle finally found an answer, he wished he had not asked the question. The discovery began with Lieutenant Kalin. For 7 straight days, he had chased fragments across intelligence networks, buried archives, and restricted databases. Most leads vanished into dead ends. Most records had been erased long ago. But patterns remained. Patterns always remained. Kalin stood inside Analysis Chamber 7 staring at a wall of interconnected data points. Every anomaly, every unexplained system access, every mysterious transmission, every impossible sighting. Slowly the connections formed a shape. Not a military campaign, not sabotage, surveillance. Someone had spent weeks learning everything about coalition leadership. Their schedules, their procedures, their habits, their weaknesses. Kalin felt his throat tighten. They were not attacking. They were preparing. He immediately requested an emergency audience with Strategic Command. 2 hours later, he stood before General Varkle inside a secured briefing room. The atmosphere felt colder than usual. The general listened in silence while Kalin presented his findings. Holographic displays floated above the conference table. Routes, timelines, communications logs. The evidence filled the room like gathering storm clouds. When the presentation ended, nobody spoke. Varkle studied the data for a long moment. Your conclusion? He finally asked. Kalin swallowed. Someone has been inside coalition space for weeks. Who? Kalin hesitated. Then he answered honestly. I believe it is the individuals referenced in the human archives. The room became completely still. One advisor frowned. You mean the legends? Kalin nodded. Another officer laughed nervously. That is impossible. Kalin looked toward him. I thought so too. He enlarged the surveillance image recovered days earlier. Then another image from Transportation Hub. Then another from a communication relay. Different locations. Different times. 2 ordinary humans. Nothing remarkable about either of them. No automat. No military escorts. No advanced equipment visible. Just a man. Just a woman. The simplicity made it worse. Varkle stared at the images. These 2 people caused all of this. We do not know for certain, Kalin replied. But every trail eventually leads back to them. The general looked unconvinced. They're only human. Kalin slowly lowered the display. That is what concerns me, sir. Thousands of light years away, the man sat alone in a quiet observation lounge aboard a civilian station. Beyond the glass, stars drifted through endless darkness. He held a cup of coffee in both hands. The aroma filled the small room. Across from him sat the woman from the transportation hub. Neither wore uniforms. Neither looked extraordinary. For several minutes, they simply watched the stars. Finally, the woman spoke. He knows now. The man nodded. Good. Do you think he understands? The man smiled faintly. Not yet. Silence returned. Comfortable silence. The kind shared between people who had worked together longer than most governments had existed. A small communication device rested on the table between them. It activated once. New message received. The woman glanced at the screen. Phase complete. The man took another sip of coffee. Then it is time. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Marcus Hayes received the same update. Officers gathered around him waited anxiously. One finally spoke. What happens now? Hayes looked toward the 2 personnel files resting open beneath the white archive lights. For the first time since this operation began, he answered without hesitation. Now they introduced themselves. Back on the coalition capital world, General Varkle stood alone in his office long after everyone else had left. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass. His reflection stared back at him from the window. On his desk rested the surveillance images. 2 ordinary humans. Nothing more. Yet somehow they had unsettled an entire coalition. He looked again at the man, then the woman. Finally, he shook his head. Impossible. At that exact moment, a secure notification appeared on his personal terminal. The encryption was unlike anything coalition systems recognized. Varkle opened the message. Only one sentence appeared on the screen. No threats. No demands. No insults. Just 7 simple words. We believe it is time to talk. For the first time since the war began, General Varkle did not feel like the hunter. He felt like someone who had finally realized he was being watched. History books would later describe the meeting as a negotiation. Those who were actually there knew better. It was a lesson. 48 hours after the message appeared on General Varkle's terminal, a secure conference chamber was prepared beneath the coalition capital. Every sensor was inspected, every communication channel monitored, every security protocol activated. Yet the room still felt strangely vulnerable. General Varkle stood at the far end of a polished table beneath soft white lights. Advisors occupied seats along the walls. Lieutenant Kalen remained near a data console, watching everything. Nobody spoke much. The silence carried weight. Then the door opened. 2 humans entered. No military uniforms. No bodyguards. No visible weapons. The man wore a dark jacket. The woman wore a gray coat. Both appeared completely ordinary. Varkle found himself staring at them with unexpected frustration. He had spent weeks imagining what humanity's greatest legends would look like. Somehow reality was more unsettling. They looked like people he could pass on a city street without noticing. The man sat down calmly. The woman took the seat beside him. Neither appeared impressed by the security measures surrounding them. Neither appeared nervous. The meeting began. Varkle studied them carefully. You entered coalition territory without authorization. The man nodded. Yes. You accessed protected systems. Yes. You interfered with military operations. The woman tilted her head slightly. No. Varkle frowned. Our reports indicate otherwise. For the first time, the woman smiled. General, if we had interfered with your operations, you would not need reports to tell you. The room became very quiet. Not because the statement sounded threatening. It sounded factual. That somehow made it worse. Varkle folded his hands together. Then why are you here? The man glanced toward the enormous star map displayed on the wall. Hundreds of worlds glowed across the projection. Human territory, coalition territory, border systems, trade routes, front lines. He studied them for several seconds. Then he finally answered, because wars do not start when fleets move. Nobody interrupted him. They start when people stop understanding each other. Varkle's eyes narrowed. You are asking for peace? The man shook his head. No. The answer surprised everyone. Peace is easy, he continued. Understanding is difficult. The woman leaned forward slightly. You called humans cowards. No anger existed in her voice. No dissentiment. Only observation. We wanted to understand why. Varkle almost laughed. You crossed half the galaxy for that. No, the man replied. We crossed half the galaxy to understand you. Silence settled over the chamber again. Kalen realized something important in that moment. Neither human had come to intimidate anyone. Neither had come to boast. They had spent weeks studying coalition society for the same reason scientists studied unknown worlds. Curiosity. The realization felt strangely humbling. The meeting lasted several hours. Questions were exchanged. Assumptions challenged. Histories compared. Gradually, the atmosphere changed. Suspicion gave way to conversation. Conversation gave way to understanding. Not agreement. Understanding. There was a difference. When the session finally ended, General Varkle accompanied the 2 humans toward the exit corridor. For a moment, all 3 stopped beside a viewport overlooking the night side of the planet. Millions of city lights sparkled beneath the darkness. The stars stretched endlessly beyond them. Varkle looked at the man. One question remains. The human nodded. Ask it. The general studied him carefully. Why are people afraid of you? The man looked through the glass toward the stars. A faint smile touched his face. Because they usually meet us after they stop listening. Then the 2 humans departed. No dramatic forward. No celebration. No victory speech. They simply walked away. Months later, the war ended through negotiations neither side would have considered possible before that meeting. Years later, Lieutenant Kalen became a professor at the Coalition Military Academy. On the first day of every semester, students always asked the same question. Were the legends real? Kalen would smile and point toward the stars visible through the classroom window. Yes. The students would lean forward eagerly. Were they monsters? Kalen always gave the same answer. No. Then he would remember two ordinary humans sitting across from the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy without fear, arrogance, or hatred. He would remember how disappointed everyone seemed by their normal appearance. And he would remember how completely they changed the course of history. That was the remarkable part, he would say softly. They were only human.